Good evening.
Ganguly.
Good evening.
Let the record reflect the clerk Segrist is in attendance, Treasurer Slavens,
Good evening.
and Trustee Snyderman.
I am present.
All right. I would like to entertain a motion to appoint somebody as Chair Pro Tem.
Mr. Clerk, I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Treasurer Diane Slavens as Speaker Pro Tem of this meeting, to chair the meeting.
All right, the motion's been made. Is there a second?
Support.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, opposed, same sign. All right, the ayes have it.
All right, well, we'll start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. And we have leisure service here for a study session on CLS strategic plan. So I'm just going to hand it right over to you, Greg.
Okay, thank you very much. Happy to be here. Thank you for setting aside this evening and giving us the opportunity to share with you the input and work that our staff and consultant with Barry Dunn, Teresa Jackson, is on with us this evening. With her guidance and our staff's help and input from a variety of groups, including board members, we have pulled together our final draft strategic plan, so there is still opportunity for edits with the intent that we would come back at the next regular board meeting for formal approval of our strategic plan. So with that, I will turn it over to Teresa Jackson from Barry Dunn and let her take it away.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. Is my screen sharing? Oh, I see it now. Okay. Sorry, I had a bit of an echo as well, but I think that's gone away. So I'm just going to start over here. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here with you. This evening, I'll be sharing with you some details surrounding the development of the 5-year strategic plan for leisure services, as well as the outcome. We kicked this process off just in September of 2022, and it has been a very fast but very thorough process. Your team was very well prepared coming out of the master planning cycle, and as you know, is preparing to update their National Parks and Recreation accreditation, which is a significant effort in and of itself. And so this strategic plan was very critical to moving that effort forward, as well as developing a document that could really support the progress of the master plan you adopted this past year. So tonight I'm going to go over the internal engagement that was conducted. I'm going to take some time to walk you through the budget, operations, and staffing assessment that was conducted. And then I will highlight the goals of the strategic plan, the strategic action plan, as well as some specific action items. So getting started here with internal engagement. So a strategic planning effort is really an internal look. So for our engagement efforts, we held 3 focus group sessions, and we also had an online SWOT survey available to CSL staff. So relative to the focus group sessions, there were a number of you in the room who were involved in these sessions. We met with the executive leadership, the CLS leadership staff, as well as the CLS professional full-time staff. And then the survey was available to all full-time staff during the month of August for 2 weeks. So through this planning effort, beyond supporting the master plan, what we set out to do is to also connect the strategic planning effort to the Township's You Belong Here community strategic plan. And so throughout this evening's presentation, you're going to see these, your pillars, the pillars of the You Belong Here strategic plan surfacing through this planning effort. And trying to form that alignment. So our first step in doing that was through the focus group sessions. So we developed 8 customized questions that really tied into the You Belong Here plan, but also would support the work of the CLS master plan and help them to develop strategies for the future. And so this slide here is really a summary of some of the reoccurring themes that we heard by category. Within the document itself, you can take a look at the specific questions and all of the comments we received through the focus group sessions. But the reoccurring themes are what I wanted to really hit on this evening. So relative to a welcoming community, we heard quite a bit about trying to provide literature as well as programs in different languages, specifically some of your registration and marketing materials. We also heard that there are still some transportation barriers, and we received a lot of feedback and ideas on to how maybe those barriers could be reduced in the future. Relative to healthy ecosystem, quite a bit here, right, relative to passive recreation and increasing connectivity through Canton, as well as the expansion of your pocket parks to support the township's initiative of providing residents with a 10-minute walk to a park. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I can keep going. There was a little bit of a little feedback there.
Yeah, we're good. We can hear you, Teresa.
Okay, great, thank you. The next area was quality infrastructure. So here we heard a lot about increasing automation, and some of this came really from the CLS supervisory staff, in that there's some efficiencies that could happen within the department by moving away from paper and having more automation within the system. We also heard there's interest in reviewing the event permit process to ensure that it's streamlined and that there's culturally sensitive policies in place. Then with organizational climate and structure, we heard about opportunities to enhance communication across the department. Sometimes there's some challenges with the trickle down of communication, and there's a need for a greater focus on training. Relative to financial sustainability, we heard there's a number of opportunities to expand partnerships and to specifically look at the potential with the school districts as well as the library. And we also heard about some staff shortfalls that have created a variety of issues across the department. And I'll get more into that as I continue through the presentation tonight. So I also wanted to share some of what we learned from the SWOT analysis. So this was an online survey that all full-time staff had access to. And there were a lot of common themes that emerged here. I mean, in the strength column, we heard a lot of fantastic things about what the department is doing. The staff are dedicated, resourceful. There's a variety of events and programs, excellent customer service and facilities, strong commitment to DEI and strategic partnerships. Relative to weaknesses, we heard quite a bit about aging infrastructure and that communication trickle down that I mentioned, as well as staff resources, the challenges the department has had the past 2 to 3 years related to hiring, specifically around part-time positions and labor type roles. As it relates to threats, we have that maintaining staff levels again. This has resulted in some programs being canceled, as well as the reduced ability to maintain program size due to various ratio requirements that are out there. And then in the realm of opportunities, we heard a lot of positive things here. So even though there are these challenges with hiring and staffing and aging infrastructure, we also heard there's a lot of opportunities to expand programs. Your community values recreation, and your staff see that there are still opportunities to expand offerings as well as facilities and partnerships. So I wanted to hit on key findings. That's quite a bit of information to throw at you, and it is abbreviated, right? But the 3 top things that we heard through this engagement process were the concerns surrounding aging infrastructure, concerns with staff resources, and communications. Now, relative to aging infrastructure, you're not alone in this. The National Park and Recreation Association tracks deferred maintenance across agencies, and they estimate that agencies typically have around 17 million in deferred maintenance. So you aren't alone in this. I think that it was on the surface with a number of your team members, and that they've been with your department for a number of years. And so they were there for grand openings, and they've seen how some facilities have declined over time, and it is concerning to them. Relative to staff resources, I'm sure this is something happening across Canton. It's happening across the country. It's become increasingly challenging to recruit and retain employees, and that's something that you're going to see more of what those impacts are as I go through the presentation tonight. And then communication. And here it's just being proactive. It's the trickle down that we heard about. It's just making sure that messaging gets all the way down to the lower levels of the department. So next I want to go into the budget, operations, and staffing assessment. So I'm going to throw a lot of numbers at you this evening, and we'll have time for questions following the presentation, but I'll try to be as thorough as I can here. So CLS is broken into 4 divisions. I am going to focus the conversation on the general fund operations. So focusing on what you see there in the green column as well as the blue. So general fund operations and Summit at the Park. So first I wanted to talk a little bit about cost recovery. So the National Park and Recreation Association, NRPA, they benchmark agencies across the country, and they categorize them based on population size. So for this study, we really focused on agencies that have a population of 50 to 100,000. And so when we look at that category and how agencies typically recover their cost, it's typically somewhere around 26%. So if we go back to 2017, 2018, and even 19, and we look at your general fund operations, you were at 26% or above. We have that drop off in 2020 due to COVID, but when we look at 21 actuals, you've really made tremendous progress with your general fund operations, and you're almost back to where you were in 2017. Now, looking at the community center fund, you were at 62 and 67% cost recovery in 17 and 18. This is an excellent cost recovery for a facility of your size and scope. There isn't a true benchmark where I can say the typical recreation center, because each recreation center varies so substantially, but based on experience, this is very strong cost recovery. In 2020, you dropped off to 23%, and you're still trying to regain where you are. So you're sitting at about 40%, but what I'm hearing from the team is numbers are continuing to go up each month as members come back. This just kind of gives us a pulse of how the department is performing year over year, as well as against agencies. So the next piece we looked at is per capita spending. So we like to take a look at how much you are spending per person in your community. And so when we go back to 2017, you're spending about $107 per person in the community. And this is, again, just looking at general fund operations. We fast forward to 2021, and we're at $85 per person in the community. So there's a lot of things driving this. So part of this is you haven't been filling your FTEs at the same rate, so your expenditures are going down. And part of highlighting this, though, also is if we look at not the last row, but the row right above, NRPA part metrics for similar sized agencies. In 17, it was $76. Today, it's $93. And so across the country, we are seeing increased spending year over year of agencies of similar size. But in part because of this inability to fill those FTEs and some labor shortages, you've declined at a higher rate than that increase is occurring. And that last row is reflecting in 2017, you were well above the national average. You're at $30 above the national average. And here today, you're 7 and some change below that national average. And this next view, it's really the same information, just in a different view for you. CLS there is in blue, so above that national average in purple until we get into COVID, and then we see that decline. We see some inching up between 20 and 21, but this is a metrics to keep an eye on in the future, knowing that you are an agency that performed above that of other agencies and trying to regain that footing. So another key metric we like to take a look at is operating expenditures per acre. And I referenced earlier that we heard through our engagement some concerns relative to deferred maintenance and aging infrastructure. And so as we dove into this aspect, it was very enlightening. So the department has 10 parks and 310 park acres. In addition to that, they maintain 106 non-park acres. So we take all of that. Oh, sorry, there's a bit of an echo. I'm just going to pause for a second. Okay, all right, it seems to be gone. So we take a look at all of the acres that the department maintains, not just those park acres. That's how the National Park and Rec Association benchmarks this. And the typical agency of your size today is spending about $9,600 per acre. Today in 2021, CLS is spending about half of that at $4,900 per acre. Now, if we backtrack all the way back to 2017, we see that difference is very small. It's about a 7% difference in the national standard at $5,500 and what CLS is spending at $5,100. So not a huge variance there. But what's happened over time is CLS spending has pretty much remained the same year over year, while the cost to maintain an acre has increased substantially, almost doubling over the last 5 years. And so I think some of what's coming through during our engagement related to deferred maintenance ties into this aspect and what's being spent annually on maintaining your facilities. So relative to staffing, this is an FTE analysis that takes a look at the 5-year change. Now, through all of this, we know that when we look at 2019 and 2020, things aren't as to be expected, right? But we can still start to get the pulse of where we were in 17 and 18 and where we were in 21. And we do see some substantial changes here. Some of it, yes, is outcome of COVID. Other pieces are related to challenges with hiring. So we've seen a swing of 54, the loss essentially of 54 FTEs since 2017. Now, I do want to footnote that 10 of those were related to facility maintenance. So relative to parks specifically, it's around the lines of 44 FTEs. So the National Park and Recreation Association, they also track the typical number of FTEs per 10,000 residents. So in 2021, that was 8.9 FTEs. Canton CLS is sitting at 7.5. So collectively, they are 14 FTEs under that of a typical sized park and rec agency. And this is looking at medians. I want to point that out. There is the lower quartile and the higher, but we kept it to medians across the board. And if you go back to 2017, CLS was well above national averages. And so you can see that shift and that decline over the course of the 5 years. So just another view to put into perspective where the major shifts have occurred. This is by division of the department. So major shift relative to the summit. Now, part of that, if revenue is down, expenses are down, FTE needs may be down. They've also had some positive growth in FTEs at the summit due to some changes that have been made to pay rates and things along those lines. In the realm of park maintenance, as I mentioned, it's become more challenging to hire across the country those labor type positions. And you can see park maintenance hasn't recovered at the same rate that the summit has. So next I want to talk about the strategic action plan specifically. So hopefully I've given you enough foundational information so that these focus areas, goals, and action items all start to come together and you can understand the basis and foundation for them. So based on our analysis work and what we learned through engagement, we identified 5 key focus areas. And from there, we developed 10 specific goals, each with actionable items. Collectively, there's 43 action items across the plan. This evening, I'm gonna highlight some of those action items. I'm not gonna go through all 43. But to begin with, the focus areas: aging infrastructure, fiscal responsibility, level of service, staff resources and communication, and sustainable environment. Now, I mentioned earlier trying to form that connection with the You Belong Here community strategic plan. So as I go through these goals tonight, you're going to notice that there may be 1, 2, 3, or even 4 icons next to the goal. As we developed the goal, we also took a look at what that connection is. And so we've highlighted it with each goal in the plan, how it circles back to the You Belong Here plan. And the welcoming community by far was the favorite icon. Sorry, couldn't help myself.
Actual drawing of John Lefevre and I as we were doing the strategic plan. She captured that.
Exactly. Thank you, Greg. I needed that. Okay, so starting with aging infrastructure, we have one goal related to it: continue to maintain and improve existing facilities and amenities, right? Something that came through strongly through our engagement. So 3 key action items here to highlight: address the deferred maintenance backlog and create an asset replacement schedule, right? Get everything on a cycle so you can see what's coming year after year in your capital improvement plan. Pursue a preventative, it echoed again. Pursue a preventative maintenance system to manage work orders, track equipment, schedule routine, preventative maintenance tasks, and support data-driven decisions. So this goes back to that automation we heard about previously. And then third, seek funding for implementation of the summit feasibility study. So relative to fiscal responsibility, we have the tie-in with financial sustainability as well as quality infrastructure. Goal 3 is to continue to implement financial strategies that support the department. And I've got 5 to highlight here. So dedicate resources to manage alternate funding opportunities, grants, and sponsorships. Recognizing here that those do take a lot of time and effort to manage. And so looking to really dedicate some resources there to expand those opportunities. 2, develop a philosophical approach to program development that prioritizes core programs. So by really identifying what the core programs are for the department, you can put more focus and emphasis in those areas and instead of trying to be everything to everyone. 3rd, develop capital and operating budgets for planned parks. You have a number of undeveloped acres. And so as you look to begin the different phases of those facilities, ensuring those operating budgets are in place in advance. 4, we have consider opportunities to establish a dedicated park improvement fund. Again, this is kind of going back to how you can address some of that deferred maintenance. And last, increase per acre spending to levels similar to the national standards published by NRPA. So now looking at level of service, we've got lots of connection points here. We've got the quality infrastructure, healthy ecosystem, and welcoming community. I've got 2 goals to highlight in this realm. Goal 4, continue the development of a well-connected system that meets community priorities. We heard a lot about the importance of connectivity in Canton. So first, we have plan and construct trails that link to existing and future facilities. And then second, formulate a prioritization system for determining which trail opportunities to pursue. So there's lots of different metrics that can be used to do this. We recommend metrics surrounding population, crime index, household income, and diversity. Goal 5, deliver exceptional programs for residents of all ages and abilities. First, we have to continue to build diverse programs that appeal to a broad array of ethnicities and cultures. We know that you are doing this and being very forward thinking relative to your special events. So continuing that into your programming. Next, we have seek a dedicated space for therapeutic rec programs to improve stability and consistency for participants. This is really key for that population and having a familiar location where they're receiving their services. Next, investigate opportunities to expand program locations equitably across the township. So this here is relative to the majority of your programs occurring at the summit and trying to identify how you can spread those programs across the community to further open access to them. And then last, we have researched the availability of document translation services. Also in the realm of level of service, we have goal 6, which is provide consistently exceptional parks and recreation facility experiences. So first, be strategic with park design and component selection for parks, shift focus to eco-friendly amenities and more passive recreation opportunities. Again, something that really surfaced through our engagement opportunities. And next, we have continued to add pocket parks to reach that 10-minute walk to a park for all residents. And this is something that we're really echoing from that master plan as well. So our next one here is staff, resources, and communication. And we have a tie-in to our financial sustainability, as well as the organizational climate and culture. So first with goal 7, continue to advance organizational effectiveness. So these are those internal tasks that can help the department to perform at a higher level. So first, we have used new technology and training to increase work efficiency. So this is all about automation, not just the work orders through a work order system, but also building inspections, building counts, incident reports. Next, we have create opportunities for CLS divisions to build camaraderie. So we talked about that trickle down. And so the more that you can engage staff at all levels, the more you increase the ability to reach them and improve communication. Next, under goal 7, we have investigate communication channels to improve information sharing with part-time staff. So this is a challenge for many agencies. You have some staff members who still want to receive things in the mail, others who want an app. They want a text message, right? So all these different spectrums. So identifying what can serve your department the most holistically. Goal 8, maintain optimal personnel levels, contracted services, and volunteer positions within the department. Obviously, something the department wants to do, is striving to do, but is an important goal to increase that per capita spending, as well as those FTE counts in order to serve your community at the highest level. So first, we have provide professional development opportunities to increase staff retention. Next, we have developed strategies to hire and retain part-time park and maintenance positions. And we highlighted this category specifically, knowing that it was the area the department still continues to struggle with. And last, we have evaluate part-time turnover to determine if certain roles in the department should be consolidated or brought into full-time positions. This is another strategy a number of departments are using across the country. There's less turnover in the full-time realm, right? There's benefits, there's typically higher pay. How can you consolidate a number of tasks to create a full-time position that's really beneficial to the department and will help with reducing turnover, which ultimately reduces your expense surrounding training. And our last focus area to highlight here tonight is sustainable environment. And so we have, of course, that tie-in with healthy ecosystems, but also quality infrastructure. So goal 9, make eco-friendly choices to conserve natural resources and help protect the environment. So the department was able to identify a number of ways that they could support this goal in the future. First, formulate a recycling plan that goes beyond single stream recycling. Next, pursue zero waste opportunities for township events. Third, we have collaborate with the planning division to incorporate the tree management program to support long-term shade and habitat improvement in parks. And last, develop a strategy for incorporating bio-waste, rain gardens, and pollinator gardens in existing and future parks. Well, that concludes my presentation for the evening. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the board? Oh, I thought I turned it. Yep. Can you hear me? Okay.
Wanted to make sure Teresa could hear you.
Well, thank you very much, Teresa. Any questions or comments from the board? This was very helpful. Kate?
I just had a question about the ideas around a long-term place for the therapeutic recreation programs. Could you just give us an idea of what that would look like to you?
You asking Teresa
Sure.
or us?
Anybody. Teresa first, and then we can see what you say.
Oh. So in 2019, I did assist the department with working on a feasibility study for the summit. And one of the recommendations from that planning effort was a dedicated space for therapeutic rec. And so in the conceptual plans, one is identified there. Greg, you might be able to speak to other opportunities that have maybe surfaced since the 2019 study, but at the time that seemed a place that they were comfortable at, that served a variety of purposes. It's just they moved around the building quite often and it limited their ability to provide more program opportunities.
Correct. So I almost forgot that you were so well versed on that plan out there, Teresa. I was going to mention the feasibility study, and Teresa was integral in helping to develop that. One of the spaces that we had identified at the summit is the PDC room, which is an underutilized room if we were able to level out that floor and make that a dedicated space for our therapeutic recreation program, as well as utilizing some of the spaces that we're looking at in Cherry Hill Village with the partnership factory building, the factory building on the corner there, with the teens out there as well. So we have a few places identified, but
Okay.
we need to.
I wasn't sure if you meant within existing facilities
Yes.
or like a separate facility, which to me would be problematic.
Agreed. Yeah, we have enough trouble finding staff for the facilities we have, so it'd be a lot. Plus, if we did it within the summit, like with the PDC room, the therapeutic rec program wouldn't necessarily be in there all day long. So if we had proper storage where we could put their equipment and then we could utilize that room as a flexible space for other programs during the day or on weekends when they're not there, And then,
And the participants in therapeutic recreation have the opportunity to mix with other
Absolutely.
populations.
yep.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Certainly don't want to isolated where we put
Yeah.
individuals.
Yep, that was my concern.
Correct.
Good.
Stephen?
Hi, thank you very much. It's quite an interesting presentation and document that we were sent. I guess my first question is, are we going to be mapping this to budget and expenses?
Yes, yeah, that would be the intent, is that we can utilize this as a planning tool for our future planning and budgeting purposes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
My other question was when you were, Teresa, going through the charts on expenditure, comparing us to the national numbers and expenses. I was very surprised. I think it was expenditures on parks. I don't know if you have the numbers in front of you, but that the national number did not drop in the pandemic, it seemed like. So can you comment on that?
Sure. I think parks were impacted in a different way than recreation through the pandemic. You had increased use of your parks and decreased use of your recreation services. And so along with that increased use came increased expenditures for maintenance, trash removal, bathroom services. And so that was not an expense area that declined through the pandemic for many agencies. Many agencies had to put more resources there and actually transferred recreation positions into the realm of parks to support the effort.
But it did seem to drop for us. And so I don't remember our parks being full of trash or anything during the pandemic, so.
They were not in as
As good.
pristine condition as we would like, and they certainly continue to be that way. We struggle with that. We have on our next presentation this evening, a Parks Resources presentation, which will dive a little bit more into those issues. But we have, for example, some of our full-time staff that have gone from being project leads and more senior staff that are now doing trash 5 days a week that would ideally be accomplished by maybe a part-time staff or those sorts of things. So a lot of our resources have had to shift from some of the larger preventative and bigger projects that we have to some of the just day-to-day operations of our facilities. But we have seen longer mowing cycles and overflowing trash and those sorts of things.
Really?
I'm glad that you haven't noticed it as much
Yeah.
as we have internally.
All right, thank you.
Tanya?
Thank you, Teresa. Can you bring up the chart where you're comparing the different sections of, the parks, the recreations, and how they have varied over the years? Just had a quick question about the upcoming trends on that. So my question is are we investing? Yes, this one, thank you. When we say recreation, what are we talking about in terms of programs?
Yes, so that would be like our special events, therapeutic recreation, camps,
Okay.
enrichment
Okay.
programs.
Okay.
Youth
So are we
therapy
seeing that, based on the trends, are we seeing that the summit use is going down and people are using more other,
We're actually seeing a return to normal for the summit. If you've been in the summit lately, it is
I mean,
extremely
in
busy.
2022, we don't have the 2022
Right,
numbers
yeah, we
here.
didn't have the 2022 numbers, but just prior to this meeting, John and I were looking at some of the revenue trends, and I could pull those up if you wanted me to at some time. But December and January of this year, already month to date in January, we have our revenue for January of this year has already exceeded January of 2019 in terms of revenue for membership sales. And
Okay.
December of 2022 was about 200% of our average 3-year, or our 3-year average for December from 17
Okay,
to
so
19.
we are
So,
seeing numbers coming back to normal. It's
Absolutely.
not like it has changed because of COVID. Things have changed.
It
considerably.
definitely dipped. We were down to about 24% of our typical usage when we first reopened, and we're getting back to about 80% of our daily usage, and I think we'll see January is getting even closer. Every month, we track our revenue, but we also track how many members check in, how many people come in for non-resident daily fees and resident daily fees. So we track that on a month-to-month basis, and we're
Okay.
following the trend on that, and every month it's been increasing.
And, the usage of the FTE as you have, that's the issue that you have. Like, how is that impacting the work in, summit, the working of the
Yeah.
summit? Because right now, parks probably are at a lower, until spring comes in, like parks have a lower priority.
I would
than
say
the
that's a
summit.
misnomer. That
Okay.
people say that, that certainly is a myth, that parks, there's less to do in the winter. There's sometimes, it's different work, but there's just as much to do, and especially with the changing climate, we've seen that
More people are
more and more people are out there. We're doing a lot more special events outside. The holiday walk that was going on all through December brought people into the park, so our park usage continues to be high. And then we have plowing and salting and other types of maintenance that we're doing, catching up on projects. We have a variety of things in my next presentation about that. But the summit, we've seen impacts there. Part of our revenue and usage struggling to recover was partially because of not having enough staff. For example, the aquatic center, we weren't open on Sundays for a long time. And then when we did open on Sundays, we didn't have open swim. Last Saturday, I believe Jeanette can speak to this. She mentioned to me that she stopped in, or over the weekend, I can't remember which day, stopped in at the summit to take her kids to open swim, and it was just crammed with people. There were birthday parties. It was like we had a full summer camp day. It was hundreds of children in the aquatic center. So last fall, when the aquatic center was closed on Sundays, that has a significant impact on revenue as well as the number of people in the facilities. So it was just within the last few months that we finally returned to pre-pandemic operating hours for the entire building as well as the aquatic center, as our staffing levels, especially for the aquatic center. We were struggling for quite some time with the front desk. We finally got that to where we're comfortable. I wouldn't say that we have an excessive amount of staff there. People are not fighting for more hours. And the aquatic center, we're recovering to where our full-time staff are not wearing swimsuits to lifeguard every day, but they are still doing that some, so we still have a little ways to go for that.
Okay.
But we're seeing more positive direction for our lifeguards, our summit front desk staff, our recreation staff, outside of our teens and therapeutic recreation. Those are two areas that we're struggling specifically within our recreation part of our participation. Like for currently our block teen center is operating at, what are we at, about 50% capacity. Not for a lack of demand, it's a lack of staff that we're not able to accommodate. We have over 100 kids on the wait list that would like to be coming to the block, and we can't accommodate just because we don't have staff there.
Michael?
I have a question. The SWOT web survey results, was that, and I apologize if I missed this, but was that an internal
Yes,
survey of staff?
yes,
Okay. And then the focus groups were the focus groups?
right.
Okay. Yeah, because as I was reading through it, I was like, this is oddly specific for a community member to come up with it. How would a
We
community
bribed a few,
member
but no, it was
have
our
an
full-time
intricate
staff.
knowledge of the relationship between finance procedures and how we acquire things? I'm like,
Our participants
no
have
resident said
a lot of
that.
ownership of our programs.
There's a lot of red tape. Oh, man. Okay, that's interesting. I'll tell you, this is a very thoughtful master plan. What's cool is I think we had a pocket parks discussion last week, and I could kind of see the three of you were there, right? So I could see the organization already starting to kind of adopt the mentality of the master plan, which was really thoughtful, right? Things like incorporating the natural environment into park development, letting the need of a specific area decide what kind of park is developed there. Like, I'm seeing that in the action plan here. So that stuff it's really cool to see. You already kind of implementing the action plan, if you will, just organically. So that part's awesome. Obviously, the funding part is a huge piece, and yeah, there are areas where I have felt like, yeah, we can do more, and we should do more, especially as we start trying to look at these pocket parks. I got lost in the SWOT analysis, so I kind of lost all of the little comments I had been banking. But I think this is substantially important because we have the aging infrastructure, whether it's the pool or the softball center or the CIP stuff, the parking lots, or the playgrounds, right, that are the play structures that are 30, 40 years old. When we put in Copper Park, we made a bit of a splash because people like newer things. Part of it is that newer things are designed around people of all abilities, right? So they're more inclusive, and so more people can interact with them in a way that you can't with other things. So that's yeah, I think we can. What I see as I kind of dig into this individual sections of the plan itself is lots of stuff that we can do and a path forward, so that we can kind of close the gap that you identified. And I feel that gap too when I look at natural environment that we haven't been able to kind of preserve, protect, maintain, or having non-private parks that are accessible for people in a walkable area. So like coordinating the path development, the trail development as it relates to connectivity into parks that are relevant to folks. And I like that you talked about letting equity kind of drive that. That makes me really grateful to see that that's incorporated into this master plan, because that was so important when we talked about welcoming community 3 years ago, when we were kind of just coming up with the You Belong Here plan. And so to see it in this master plan here, that means a lot. When I read that, I said, this is awesome. This is a good plan.
Yeah, we often talk about the actual community master plan, right? It's kind of an inventory of what we have already, right? The parks that we have, and it's just kind of this plan. But I think the strategic plan side of it is probably right up your alley, because this is like the teeth of it, right? This is what staff use to decide where we go from here. And this is really the pulse of who our people are and what we're trying to pull off. And that's why I think this process is usually gets a lot more grit to it, right? The master plan is nice because it tells us, all the parks we've got and all the spaces we want to develop, but this one kind of tells us how we're going to do it. And so this has always got a lot more energy to it, and I'm happy, I'm glad we're able to correlate that stuff, where you see some of the efforts that we're making for some of the specific parks and plans that we want to do, because that's what this plan does for us, and that's why it's important to have a strategic plan. And not everybody does that. Not everybody separates them out. It makes them separate, but we always have, and I think that's kind of what keeps us, moving forward and doing cool stuff. So.
I had initially, if I can just briefly, I did a little mini inventory of like other communities and how many parks they have and things like that, and compared us. And I saw that we were lacking in quantity compared to other communities. And that acre, that cost per acre, that just drove that home where I said, yeah. I kind of subjectively tried to quantify it by looking at other communities with public parks. And one of the questions was, well, what does that compare acreage? And it's like, well, no, I don't have the capabilities of doing that. But Leisure Services and Very Dunn do, and you did that. And that is important. And I think that, for me, that's really instructive. When you start looking at how much space we have in Canton and how much we are reserving for the public good, and how much is being reserved for the private good, it is abundantly clear we have work to do.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Thanks, sir. I have another question. I do really appreciate this and all the work that went into it, but I'm wondering, it's about Goal 3.6, consider opportunities to establish a dedicated park improvement fund. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit and give us some ideas.
I would say, and Teresa, you can follow up. We talked about a variety of different options for that. It could be something within the general fund or community improvement fund where specific funds are set aside annually to say that we're going to invest in capital in the amount of whatever that dollar amount is, 10 million, 20 million, however many millions we want to set aside for that annually. Or a specific funding initiative within the community, like a millage or those sorts of things. Obviously, that would have to have greater board support for those sorts of things. So it could be a variety of different ways that that could be done. I know in the past, when we sold a park property, or not a park property, a township property, those funds were specifically set aside for investment into other open spaces within the township. So is that a way to do it? So there's a variety of ways. We didn't come up with a specific, this is how we should do it, but we should explore a variety of options and work with the board and executive team to see what options would be available.
Right. And that's what I was looking for, just ideas. Thank you.
Like, hit that well enough, Teresa?
You did, and it's hard for me to identify specific ones because there's different state regulations. So your finance department plays a key role in this conversation as well.
Around 100. Past couple, it went up with our population, so it was about 150,000, right in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
So it's been 120 and gone up to 150.
So that's one source of funding back to the township.
Yeah. Well, this was great, very helpful. I know we've been talking a lot about communications, and that was brought up in this, as well as I found it very interesting. And I know we had to tighten our belts years ago, but, the fewer FTEs, and as we're growing and wanting to do more for our community and for our residents, this is all kind of going to blend together. So we really appreciate this presentation. So thank you so much.
Excellent. I'd like to
And-
specifically thank Teresa Jackson with Barry Dunn. She did a fantastic job of really capturing a variety of different ideas from a variety of different sources, took the guidance that we requested that we really, as you can see, hopefully you can see, and you mentioned it, that we were intentional about ensuring that we tied everything back that we were doing back to the board goals. We didn't want to just do what Leisure Services thought we wanted to do. We wanted to ensure that we tied everything back there. But then, we have Jeanette Aiello with us this evening and John Lefevre with us this evening that, they played a huge role in this. Jeanette was our project lead with this, communicating directly with Teresa and going back and forth. She had to provide a ton of information. And then the rest of our leadership team and really all of our staff played some role within this. But these two folks were very instrumental. Jeanette especially was extremely instrumental. So certainly appreciate her being here tonight to help us present this.
Well, thank you very, very much. And now we'll step into the parks resources.
So Teresa, if you want, you're welcome to stick around for the Parks Resources presentation, or if you choose to enjoy the rest of your evening, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I'm gonna log off. Have a good evening.
Have a
Thanks,
good night.
Teresa.
All right.
You need a minute or no?
You want to take a brief minute?
No.
Are you good to go?
I think we're fine, yeah.
All right.
It's plugging along.
We will do that then. Let me make sure I got this going. I need to share my screen now. Okay, very good. I'm glad that came through the proper way. All right, so really we just wanted to take this opportunity. It was very interesting. We were kind of working on this information separately from what Teresa was working on for the strategic plan. And when she came to us with one of the drafts, we stole a lot of that information. We're like, wow, it really ties together this park resources information along with what Teresa and Barry Dunn presented this evening and pulled into our strategic plan. We worked heavily on this, gathering this information. We worked with our finance department and municipal services partners to help provide some of the other information from their department. So it's just a little deeper dive into some of the staffing and resources that we discussed earlier, specifically for our Parks Department. So this is a little bit further dive into the details of what our full-time hours looked like for 2022. So you saw 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21, but where were we at in 2022? If you recall, at the start of 2022, we were able to come to the board and add 2 full-time positions last year. So that was very key to the success that we had last year. Had we not had those 2 individuals, I don't know how we would have made it through the year. So thank you for those that last year. So you can see on here, we broke this down a few different ways. The entire year, and this information was provided to us by the finance department. So this is a summary of the information that they provided. Sarah Clay in the finance department pulled all of this directly out of the payroll system. So 2013 to 2019, between part-time overtime, full-time hours, and full-time overtime, we were averaging about 30,600 hours of work per year. And then kind of what we talked about is what happens in the summer and then what happens in the winter, how many hours are going on there, how does that look? So Sarah broke it down for us for the second and third quarters, which is going to be your typical park season that you think of, and then the first and fourth quarters in there, so you can kind of see what that looks like, with the second and third quarter having an average of 20,600 hours, and the first and fourth closer to 10,000 hours. So how does that look in 2022? We're at just over 29,000 hours in 2022 as a whole. And then you look at the second and third quarters, which is the traditional busy time that you think about for parks, just over 17,000. And the first and fourth quarters, where we had actually more hours due to those full-time hours, 11,876. But specifically, if you look at the part-time hours there for the entire year, we're at about 50% of what we had previously. In the 2013 to 2019 average, we had 12,600, and this year 7,300. So I guess it's over 50%, but maybe 60%. I didn't do the math. So then looking at, this is specifically the part-time hours here, the difference in the number of hours. So we had about average, so 5,300 hours less than what we had previously. 5,400 of those are in the second and third quarter, and then we actually had a couple extra hours worked for us in the first and fourth quarter. So what does that look like if we were to make those into a full-time equivalent? Three employees over the year and 6.2 in the summertime that we were short of our typical hours there. And then for the entire year, once you add in the 2 additional full-time staff that we did have, about 0.88 for the entire year, and almost 4 employees short during the summer, and a little, I wouldn't call it surplus during the winter, a little extra in the winter that helped us to get caught up on a lot of the projects that we've been falling behind on. As you know, we've certainly since 2013 added a significant amount of resources, or not resources, but items to our inventory that we maintain within our park system from what we had in 2013. So,
Just a surplus over what we have had in the past.
yeah, it's a surplus.
Doesn't mean a surplus altogether.
Correct. Doesn't mean we
compared
had
to-
extra people. So what does this look like, and what is our staffing looking like? We've certainly seen a shift in priorities for our staff since the pandemic. We have had, in 2018, our average full-time employee worked 313 hours of overtime in a year, which is a lot. In 2022, our average full-time staff worked 282 hours, but our newer employees, which tend to come from, have different priorities and maybe a different generation, worked an average of 153 hours of overtime. And in 2022 was the first time ever that we've had overtime shifts that we've posted that have gone unfilled. So we had shifts that we would have liked to have filled. We would have liked to have had more hours than this, because we had, for example, at our sports center, we had shifts that ideally would have been filled by part-time staff that we worked overtime every single weekend throughout the summer. So those were, instead of paying somebody $16 an hour, we're paying somebody $45 to $60 an hour for those same hours over the summer. And that happened every single weekend for those shifts all summer long. Part-time, obviously, we've talked about a decreasing number of employees, but we're also seeing a decreased number of hours per employee. So the graph that's shown there is the average number of hours worked per year by a part-time employee. And you're seeing that we were 600 to almost 700 hours per employee, where now we're down below 500 hours worked in a given year per employee. One of the changes that you've seen here is the American Health Care Act has shifted a couple of things to where you can't work more than 29 hours per week without providing somebody benefits, and we also can't work somebody more than 6 months, and it has to be a defined season. So if we pick our park season as one 6-month period and somebody doesn't start till halfway through that period, they can only work 3 months, because your season has to be a defined season of 6 months to work those employees. So that's been a significant change for us as well. And a lot of people that are doing part-time work, as you may know, are working 20 hours for this employer and 20 hours for that employer to get their 40 hours that they need in a given week. So they're not able to give us 30 hours, 40 hours that we may want them to work in a season. So that's been a decrease in the number of people, but then the people that we have are working less hours as well. That slide was supposed to be deleted. I don't know who did that. That's me. Service impact. What does this do for our residents, and what are residents seeing on a given day? Pavilion rentals. Overall, our number of reservations has decreased significantly. We've gone to, on weekends, historically, we would offer our 2 pavilion rentals per day per pavilion. You could have a morning rental or an afternoon/evening rental. Now we're just doing it 1 per day because we don't have the staff to go in and clean that pavilion in between rentals. And we've also seen an increase in the number of refunds that we've given out because we go through in the morning, clean that pavilion. The individual that's renting that pavilion may not use the pavilion till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And other residents throughout the community will come in and utilize that pavilion because there's nobody in there and nobody to enforce saying you can't go in there. So they're going in and dirtying up that pavilion. And then when the rental for the day gets there, they come into a dirty pavilion, trash everywhere, those sorts of things, and say, you guys didn't clean our pavilion. We want our money back because they have a poor experience. It's not that we didn't clean it. We just didn't clean it just before they got there. We cleaned it in the morning. Other people use it. You can see how that would happen to us, but due to our staffing restrictions, we haven't been able to do that. Special event applications, so these are those large community events like the Punjab Melee and other large community events where they come in and rent the park from us, and we actually cover all of our costs plus some on those events. We've dramatically reduced the number of events that we will approve in a given year because we just don't have the staffing resources to accommodate near the number of event applications that we get. Uncompleted work and backlog, we have a variety of projects, our playground maintenance. We had a slide for one of our playgrounds that we didn't install for 3 years because we just did not have the resources to get out and replace that slide. Our regular maintenance schedules, extended mowing schedules, so this is where we go from our typical 5 to 7 days depending on the turf that we're maintaining, and we extend those out to 8, 9, 10, 11 days. And we have seen a variety of complaints over the last few years about that because the grass does get, especially in the quick growing cycles, where the grass is getting too long. And we've also seen some increased costs for contracted services, for example, like around this building. Our staff used to procure mulch at a bulk price, and then our staff would do the mulching. We don't have the time to do that anymore, so we're using contracted services to hire a company to come in and do the mulching for us, which is significantly more expensive than us doing the mulch ourselves. First and fourth quarter work, so this is where we talked about what do parks do in the off season, right? So that's kind of a myth as to what the off season is. Fertilizer treatments for all of our turf that we skipped for a number of years. Last year we were actually able to treat several of our parks areas with fertilizer that we have not treated in a number of years. So, and that was specifically because we had those additional full-time staff to boost our first and fourth quarter labor force in there. Playground maintenance, this is as we're adding more playgrounds and our playgrounds are aging, this is becoming a larger and larger project for our staff. Cemetery cleanup, I think it was Kenyon Cemetery that we went and spent. They thought our parks crew would go spend a day over there to clean that up. They ended up being there for about a week cleaning that up because it had been so long since we had been there and done a real detailed cleanup of that cemetery. Drainage, building exterior repair, fencing services, sign replacements, snow removal, tree crew. We have so many trees that constantly need maintenance and taking down dead and falling trees. We could take a 3-man crew and put them on trees for the entire winter, and they would never run out of work. So we end up spending contracted services on a lot of our trees. Some of that contracted services is if we don't have the proper equipment for trees, but other contracted services is because we just don't have the resources to go out and handle all of the needs that we have specifically for tree maintenance. This is the park acres that was shown before in Teresa's spreadsheet that she showed. This is specifically looking at our 2023 budget of where we would end up if we spent all of our money, which we never do. I don't think we've ever spent all of the money that we have been allocated, especially for our Parks Department, and especially in our part-time wages. We were significantly low on our part-time wages. Our overtime was up last year because we were filling part-time positions with overtime. You'll notice in this breakdown that this does not include Ridge Road Park or other future sites like Fire 2, those sorts of things, because we're not considering, even though we do some limited maintenance out at Ridge Road Park right now, if we were to add that 140 acres into this figure, you would see a significant drop in this operating expenditures per acre there. So adding those 140 acres. So this, everything that we're talking about tonight is to kind of get us to a good level to maintain the resources that we maintain today, not including, pardon?
Back to even?
Yeah, kind of getting back to even and maintain the resources that we're charged with maintaining today, but not the resources that we need for the day that Preservation Park is, or not Preservation Park, Ridge Road Park is fully built out, or Fire 2 Park comes on board, or other of the pocket parks that we do, Copper Park, for example, very small park, very maintenance intensive park, and it's also at the farthest corner of the township from us. So it takes almost an hour round trip just to get a crew out there to maintain that park. So while it's a small area to maintain, just to go out and mow that small area, we have to send a crew. It takes, just an hour of their day is gone just by travel. So those are some considerations that we have where you think, oh, it's just a half-acre park, right? But you have to factor in the travel time as well. And we do maintain a fair amount of non-park sites throughout the township. That's 106 acres right there. Vehicles. This is another area that we have some very aging infrastructure here. And these are the vehicles that we plow with, that we get the crews around with, haul our equipment, those sorts of things. You'll see we have the 5 vehicles that are on here are vehicles that are identified by our fleet maintenance department that are past their replacement schedule as to when, based on their policies and their recommendation, that these vehicles should all have been replaced. I believe 10 years is the standard for the township for replacement. So these are all, you see, we have one vehicle on there that's 22 years old on here. It's a very old.
Out of service.
Yeah, 2 of these are actually out of service that you'll see on here, the top 2 on here. So this is how much fleet maintenance has spent on each of those vehicles past their replacement date on maintenance. And these top 2 are not even the maintenance prior to 2017 and 2018 on the vehicles that were taken out of service. These are 2 fire trucks not fire trucks, but trucks from fire, I should say. We don't have any fire trucks in our department. Trucks from fire. Correct, right. We can use the ladders and get up there. Trucks that were transferred to us from the fire department because they were past their service life. So fire replaced those vehicles, but the vehicles they were taking out of service were actually in better condition than the vehicles that we were still utilizing. So we have 2 trucks that were taken out of service that we said, we'll take them because they're better than what we got. So they spent just on those 2 vehicles over $11,000 getting those vehicles maintained since we took them on. So as you can see, that is a bit of an issue for our department here. And it's costing fleet maintenance extra money as well. Field groomers, this is something that staff and I have been talking with the deputy supervisor and supervisor extensively about. We think we have a plan to replace one of these field groomers this year. We'll be coming to the board with a request to replace one of these, but these field groomers are used to groom all of our playing surfaces for ball fields every day throughout the spring, summer, and fall. We start utilizing those fields mid-March and go all the way close to December before those fields are shut down for the year. So that's kind of goes again to that misnomer that the parks are shut down in the winter, right? Because we start March 15th-ish, sometimes sooner, and go all the way into December, especially with the current weather patterns that we're seeing, basically until the snow flies, which I guess we could still be open right now if not much snow this year. But they're used every day, and the two that we have, one is from 2002 and one is from 1999, and they both have over 2,600 hours of use. A new unit will cost about $50,000. But the one that we're going to be proposing this spring to the board to purchase, we will be reducing our contracted services by $9,000 a year in our sports center budget, because just last year we contracted with somebody to come out and laser grade, redo the leveling of two of our quads out at the sports center for $9,000. If we had this machine internally, we'll be able to do that on our own, all the quads every year. So that'll be a significant difference there. Lily spreader, which we use to spread our fertilizer and other grass feeding things throughout the parks. We share this piece of equipment with our golf course. So it's critical that we get a new one of these by March of '23. It's going to cost about $8,000 for that, because the one that we have, after we were done utilizing it this year, our fleet maintenance department took it away from us and won't give it back because it's in such bad shape. They said, we won't even touch this thing. You have to buy a new one. So that's kind of where we're at with the lily spreader. So what are all these different resource considerations overall that we're looking at? Last year when we requested the two laborers for our department, our initial plan was actually for 4 laborers for our department. We actually considered some different levels of employees, but really overall 4 employees. With 2 of those, the 2 that we did not end up moving forward with last year, we were going to place them on a schedule that would give us weekend and evening coverage. So they would work an afternoon into the evening shift and cover the weekend. So one of them would work Saturday through Thursday, and the other would work Wednesday through Sunday, and then working like a 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. schedule. So because last year, every Friday night, last summer, we did not have any park rangers in our parks all summer long. So that would be one of the areas that these individuals would cover: bathroom cleaning, trash pickup, allow our other staff that I mentioned that have been doing full-time trash cleanup work to be relieved of that duty to go back to some of their projects that they would typically do. So ideally, we would be looking at 2 laborers for our Parks Department. The trucks are each right around $43,000. The Fleet Maintenance Department had preemptively put 2 on order with one of the dealerships last year to at least get part of that, but we're not committed to those because we don't have funding in our 2023 budget for those trucks. And again, those are replacements of all of our current trucks, not an expansion in the number of vehicles that we're looking for. Ideally, we would love to get more vehicles because we added 2 staff last year without adding any trucks. I don't know that we had police officers without adding vehicles for them. Especially if we're talking about additional employees. And then the equipment that we talked about, the field groomer and the lily spreader. And so 2023, what are we looking to do? Continue, obviously, to aggressively pursue part-time and seasonal employees. We work very closely with our HR department. As you know, we made an aggressive increase to the wage scale last year. One of the things that Wendy had talked about and we had talked about when we did that increase in the wage scale last year is that could cost us $500,000 to $900,000 a year for leisure services. I believe the only area that we actually increased wages spent over budget last year was in our golf department, where we were able to be fully staffed. Parks Department, we did not spend everything that we had, so we came nowhere near to spending that $500,000 to $900,000 of funds that were set aside for those staff. Identify staffing levels for nights and weekend coverage, so that's where we talked. I had mentioned that our consideration proposal was for weekend and evening coverage with full-time staff. So currently we're doing that with a mix of overtime and then scheduling additional help from our part-time staff. And then considering addition of full-time staff would be huge for our department. Long-term staffing plan, as we look to add future spaces for the township. As I mentioned, these needs that we're looking at right now would help address our current deficiencies for our current parks. But as we're expanding our park operations and parks that we're offering the community, we'll need to take that into consideration as well, because to maintain Ridge Road Park fully without adding resources would be, I don't know how we would do that. And then our operating budget, as we talked about with Teresa, just looking at our overall spending on the parks in Canton Township. If we want to have world-class facilities, we need to maintain those facilities and staff those facilities to make that a possibility and not have. We had staff last summer. They're very dedicated, working 300 plus hours of overtime. We had staff that went multiple weeks without a day off because they were working overtime Saturday and Sunday, and then their regular hours Monday through Friday, and that's a unrealistic pace for our staff to maintain, and they are definitely feeling the burn on those sorts of things. So we're here to communicate that to you all so you kind of know where we're standing. We're not asking for a solution this evening, but wanted to provide you with all of this information kind of in preparation for our board retreat that we're having coming up, as we're talking about different needs throughout the township and where the township's or the board's priorities. And we understand that the township has limited resources. We can't just throw staff at everything, and throw money at everything under the sun, because there's only so much money out there. But we wanted to let you know kind of where we are with our resources for the Parks Department specifically. You have any additional comments? And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that presentation. Questions or comments from the board? Tanya?
So as far as I understand, the main issue that you have is availability of people.
That is correct.
That's beyond your,
Yes.
so the steps that we took last year of increasing the wages, has that helped?
I believe it helped, because I don't think we would have had as many people apply and fill the part-time and seasonal positions that we did fill, but we were still significantly below our ideal levels to do the proper maintenance on our parks. Had we not done it, I think we would have been in a whole heap of trouble.
Yeah, we saw it in a lot of areas. Seasonally, of course, getting camp staff, getting facility staff, even now picking back up in the summit, some of those jobs have been a little bit easier, but some of our tougher ones have been kind of where there's a little bit more labor involved. Those have been really difficult positions to fill. So it's kind of where we're at today, and why we're there is, even after we typically in a park season can have 20 to 30 part-time seasonal staff, and we had 6 last year. So, and that wasn't 6 at one time, that was 6 over the course of the summer. So it hurt really bad. So adding the 2 full-time staff last year was a huge boost. Like Greg said, I don't know what, it would have been very difficult to get through, especially when you have people off due to injury or medical vacations. So it's kind of where we're at. And we're just trying to find different ways to close that gap, because it's pretty big. And we're trying to keep up and trying to grow at the same time, and do all the things that the community would love to have as far as parks and development, but it's kind of hard when we're kind of working from a deficit, every day.
Our friends in the facility maintenance department are in the same boat as far as filling part-time positions for facility maintenance. I believe last time I spoke with Jade about this, it had been well over a year since they had even received an application for a part-time maintenance position, to where they're just not even really trying. I mean, they still have the position posted, but they're just operating without part-time staff there because they're just not getting any. So it's kind of a similar, those labor positions are extremely challenging to fill.
And I assume that's like all over, it's not just Canton Township?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, and temp agencies, if you wanted to try and bring them in, they don't have a magic pool that they're pulling people out of, so they're paying people $25 an hour to do those things. So you're going to pay them $35 an hour for a temp person, and they're requiring that you commit to 40 hours for that person. So we would be better off just hiring a full-time person ourselves, would be cheaper than going that option. So we have explored those options. I know when facility maintenance was in leisure services, we explored that, and we looked at that for parks as well, and it's extremely costly to do that.
Any other questions or comments?
I don't really have a question, just more of a, well, maybe it is a question. What are you exploring anything different with trying to recruit folks or bring them into the township to fill some of these positions? I know that hiring everywhere in every sector is an issue right now, it seems like. Just wondering what we're doing to make people know that there are these jobs available.
Any idea that we can throw against the wall, we're doing recruitment videos, we're doing lawn signs, we're doing Facebook postings. Our cable department has been fantastic with coming up with quick little snippets that we can put on. We put them on Instagram. We've got them posted on our website, social media, every job posting that you can come up with, from Indeed on down the line. I think our HR department posts it on well over 50 different job posting sites, any job posting that we have. So we're one step away from putting John out on a corner spinning a sign, trying to get people down here. So if you have an idea, one, I would be surprised if we haven't tried it already, but 2, we will try it.
I know that most of the jobs are for those that are 18 and older, but have the schools and.
We've actually created a junior, what do we call it, a junior laborer, junior ranger, I believe, for 16-year-olds. Very limited in the work that they can do, but we have created that position. We've had a few decent people, and the hope is that we can get our hooks in them when they're 16, 17, and then they'll want to return to us when they're 18, 19, 20, et cetera. We had a handful of, we were fairly successful over the years of getting a lot of early retirees from the automotive industry that would come work for us, and we had a couple of gentlemen that worked for us for 15 years. But when the pandemic hit, they were going down to Florida for the winters and coming up here and working for us during the summer. pandemic hit, and they just said, I'm going to stay in Florida. And they just aren't coming back now. So some of those resources that we were getting, and the automotive industry is just not doing those types of buyouts where we're having 55-year-olds that are looking for a fun summer job to go out and mow lawns. We got the supervisor's husband last summer to come work in our parks department. He was one of our 6. He was a great employee.
Well, IT layoffs coming, so talk to me next month.
Jenna Mower. You'll love it. It'll be a great time.
Are we, this is very small, but are we planning on like inflation increases in our wages next year?
So we tied, when we approved the wage scale last year, it was tied to the merit increases. So January 1st of this year, when the merit wages went up by 3%, the part-time wage scale went up by 3% as well, which is that's going to be key for us. I mean, 3%, is it huge? No, but hopefully what that'll help is, one, if, continue to see those wages going up for people, but also 5 years from now, we haven't fallen so far behind like we did last time, and then we have to make such a huge jump if we make those incremental increases. When John and I and Jeanette, I believe, started for the township, the part-time wage scale was tied to the merit. But during the economic downturn, it was separated from that. And it stayed stagnant for years and years at a time, so it fell behind.
Were all our wages above minimum wage?
Yes. Yeah, I believe our lowest right now, well, it was 15, and then you add the 3% on top of that.
The
so.
contracted services, are you gonna take a look at? Because, I mean, those are more expensive, but when you hire someone to do it and you do it full-time, there's benefits associated, so I don't know where the tipping point is.
Yeah, so there's certain areas, like I mentioned, special projects like mulching. We contract out the mowing for like the grass around this facility and some other stagnant type facilities, but it's very challenging to contract out some of the maintenance for our higher used parks and facilities, because we flex our maintenance schedules around our programs. So you can't just hire XYZ landscaping to come in and mow Heritage Park because, well, this week you can't do it on Tuesday, next week it's got to be Wednesday, but it's got to be in the morning before this time, and those sorts of things, because it's constantly shifting. It's so tied into our programs, our games, our rentals, all those sorts of things. So it's very challenging to do that in a contracted way as well. So where we can, we have done that.
Thanks.
Okay, any other? Okay, well, thank you very much. This was very helpful, too. This great study
We certainly
session.
appreciate your
Yeah.
time and the opportunity to bring this information to you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Do we have any public comments? Anybody on public comments? Any public comments? No.
I see none.
And any public comments here? Any public comments here? Any public comments here? Doesn't look like it. Gotta ask 3 times. How about staff? Any comments? Anything you want to say, or?
I'd like to thank Greg, John, and Jeanette for putting this presentation together. It's something we've kind of been working on for several months, and obviously, your services has a lot of needs, and instead of kind of taking each one as a one-off, we kind of decided that it might be better for them to kind of tell the full story and move forward the big picture of things. Thank you for your job with it.
Yeah, thank you. I know you guys have put a lot of time into it. I know we had that Pocket Park meeting the other day, and so you guys have been really putting the time in, and we appreciate that very, very much.
I guess I should take a minute to thank our partners in finance and municipal services that helped us pull this information together, because without them, we couldn't have had such a broad picture and well-rounded picture of sometimes it's hard to capture with that, we know we're short, just trust us, we're short, but they're able to help us portray that and make sure that we're all on the same page with that as well.
Well, any board comments? Any board comments? Yeah, thank you. All right, well, I guess we have, do I have a motion to end this meeting?
So moved.
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and we are adjourned.
Great job.